lineage, but presuming that they are Rothsteins, it's rather strange then that Rothstein shares family ties to another family, another prominent Jewish family that has been the center of many theories for hundreds of years and has been involved in everything from currency manipulation to economic crashes and to assassinations and everything in between, and that family would be the Rothschilds. Indeed, I was rather surprised to see that the two families are related, and pretty directly, because all I had to do was scroll over to the side and boom, there it was. The Rothsteins and the Rothschilds, two infamous crime families, connected right next to one another. Who knows, maybe this is all just one giant coincidence wrapped in a coincidence taped in a rigmarole, but I really don't believe in those, and I'm not comfortable just saying things are just a coincidence. I think that's a lazy excuse when too many facts start presenting themselves. Who is Erika Kirk? So in this series, we're going to seek to find the answer to that question. And trust me, I would not have expected that the most basic question possible was going to take us so many episodes to get to, and I most certainly did not expect that it would leave me wondering if Charlie really was a contemporary Truman Burbank.
Tell me what's happening! You're part of this, aren't you?
Imagine if you could make one half of your family truly obscure at best, or completely indecipherable at worst. Who and what you are related to would be impossible to distinguish, and so remember that for later. We have to try taking one last look at her family, but this time not at her parents, although they might have been involved. Instead, this time we're going to look at her roommate, which seems unexpected, but let's go. More than once, Erika Kirk has discussed how she dated no one during her 5 years living in New York until she met Charlie, which is an outright and easily disprovable lie, but that's for later. Erika says she really didn't want to date because of the following reasons.
I'm not going to ask you your personal journey, but what I will say is when I lived out here, I was here for 5 years. I never dated here because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Somehow getting drinks was the replacement of having coffee and breakfast. I personally would rather have coffee or brunch with someone than going, I don't drink. I find it unproductive, not because I'm holier than whatever. I just don't operate that way. But I always thought it was very strange how she would go to drinks with one guy and then go to dinner with another. So it goes twofold here. So if you're expecting to marry someone that I was blessed with, like a Charlie, you have to be the type of woman that will attract a Charlie.
This was one of the only interesting tidbits in this horribly staged interview with that broad Weiss, whatever her name is, because it made some of us go, huh, I wonder who that roommate is that was such a bad influence. And lo and behold, after scouring Erika's various social media platforms, videos began emerging like these. And so now we can call into question who Erika Kirk really was in those 5 years, but once again, don't want to get ahead of myself. And instead we're going to hone in though on who is appearing in many of these videos. And based on a bunch of comments ranging as far back as 10 years ago on Erika's various accounts, we see a common thread that this same female is commenting on Erika's posts, and she just so happens to look like Erika's roommate who appears in these videos. And her name is Nicole Rothstein. And Nicole is actually not just her roommate or soulmate or best friend, whatever she calls her. Nicole is also Erika's cousin. And this is going to become a much bigger deal as we move forward. Nicole, unlike Erika, at least, at face value comes from money, and interesting money at that. The Rothstein name is not exactly synonymous with honesty. If they were in a dictionary, those two are on the opposite ends of one another. In fact, antonyms would probably be a better way to put it. In this photo Erika posted in 2017, she is sitting next to a man whom I wager to be in his 50s, and another man who's standing in front of her, who I would wager is putting the pedal to the metal, pushing 70, late 70s that is. And at the time, and really up until recently, if you had clicked on that photo on Erika Kirk's account on Instagram, you would notice that there's someone tagged. And that someone tagged is named Alan Rothstein, who Erika says is her uncle. And this old dude, I'm presuming here is Gramps, and this uncle that she references, I can only imagine is on the mother's side and is a member of that unknown segment of Erika's family that is seemingly being obfuscated. In any case though, when reviewing who Alan Rothstein is, I can understand why Erika may have chosen to hide that side of her family. Because Alan is not, as Hannah Montana says, the boy, the boy, the boy, the honest goods, the real McCoy. My goodness. Uncle Alan has been involved in several criminal operations. For instance, there is a long case file which goes into detail about how Alan defrauded someone of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was supposed to be a consultant, but was actually just an insider, kind of like a spy, and was just getting info and using his position to spend hundreds of thousands of the company's dollars doing nothing. And Alan, if you're watching this, just want to say, that's not cool, bro. jerk move. The document then gets deep into legal jargon, but discusses tens of millions of dollars at one point and falsely claimed assets, and then goes into the realm where a lawyer might be mildly confused. At its heart though, Allen seems to possess the sticky fingers that his namesake is so infamous for, as we shall see. And lo and behold, someone who likes to pilfer the proverbial cookie jar also possesses a number of what are pretty obvious, in my opinion, friend companies. I run into a ton of these in videos. They're companies with little or no website, no customer history, no definable product, and they just sit there for years and sometimes decades doing nothing. But they are convenient for running money through, especially ill-gotten money, which seems to be Allen's MO. Not kidding, I was peeping through his companies and he's got a property management company, a hedge fund, and a bunch of others, and none of them seem to actually do much. That all said, whatever Allen and his family are doing is evidently working quite well for them, I might add. As Allen, though through a tool I use, I learned that Allen lives in a $13 million home. Not bad for a guy who seems to have never really worked a job or built anything himself. And that sort of cash also speaks to who was funding Erika's cousin Nicole, and possibly Erika herself, while they live the expensive Manhattan life, doing nothing of material value. Now let's jump another step into the family and hit up Carla Solomon, originally Carla Francevy. This is apparently Erika's dad's sister, so once again, a little info on the mom's side. Carla can be explained in the following words. From the YouTube commenter, Vivian Ballard 391 5 years ago. I'm not implying that she is only interested in the financial stability of men. However, it must be said that she avoids relations with impoverished men. YouTube really is a wonderful place. Thank you for that comment. In other words, Carla married a man about 29 years older than her by the name of Jack David Solomon. A 29-year age difference. Jack himself is a bit of a character. He's one of the few people who have been born in America that possesses such an immense affinity for Israel. And oh yeah, we're going there. Jack has been a leading executive, or simply the leading executive, at a plethora of some of the largest companies on Earth, many of which possess multi-billion-dollar valuations and or are simply government operations. For instance, for whatever reason, he was plopped into the chairman position of the board of directors for things like Federal Land and Development Corporation for 36 years, and Federal Research and Development, and Advanced Patent Technical. All sorts of things that when I'm reading it make me go, who are you really, bro? Especially because a sort of thing like that requires power, influence, money, control, and access, and gains you a lot of power, influence, money, control, and access. And for this next bit, I'm just going to skim through some of the organizations he's been highlighted as being a member of from his death website, although I assure you there are likely many others. Membership: National Directory Quality Operations Foundation, 1963 to 1966. He's a sponsor of the National Hospital of Denver. He's also the co-founder of the Israeli Armored Corps Museum. Patron or Chadash Orphanage Israel. Vice Chairman California Democratic Council, 1966 to 1970. Candidate for California State. 1966, Director of the United Jewish Foundation, 1956 to 1967. Committee member for the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. Member of the World Affairs Council, member of the President's Cabinet for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, member Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce. Oh yeah, that would be because he was a controversial casino owner. He was also the director of the Utah Shakespearean Festival, 1999 to 2000. Seems like a weird addition. He's also the member of the American Air Museum in Britain, a foundation member, the Armed Forces Commission and Electronics Association. Sounds powerful. National Aeronautics Association, International Association of Business and Professional, honorary. B'nai B'rith, President Club Utah Valley State College. Yes, that's where Charlie Kirk was shot. President Club Brigham Young University. President Club World Jewish Congress, life. 32nd degree Mason, Scottish Rite, life. Yeah, so a lot of things should stand out to you there. The UVU, the massive ties to Israel, the powerful committees and organizations, and I could really out for a while just about the Israel connections alone and why that's weird. But if I have to tell you that, then you've probably been living under a rock and have missed the dozens of red flags I just read. But these connections do go deeper than that, so deep that bro paid for and restored the ancient Zion's Gate and Plaza in Jerusalem, which is rather a big deal to folks over there. Needless to say, he's sort of a huge deal in that community, and he's also very clearly connected to the highest echelons of the government and business, and the people who decide if and what you shall eat. What an odd family member for Erika to have, considering I was under the impression she was a Christian girl from Scottsdale, Arizona. But if this all didn't elucidate you to the fact that we are talking about some seriously connected people, like I said, he's a member of this thing called, that I can't pronounce, it's a Jewish secret society named B'nai B'rith. It's a very unique organization, very secret society-esque, very Freemason-esque, which apparently is controversial because they claim it's antiseptic to say that they are Freemason related, despite having a huge portion of their founding members actually being Freemasons as well. So take that as you may. But whatever, toss that aside. We also know from that whole blurb, Jackie Poo is a 32nd degree Freemason, which should be ringing bells for everybody, from the most unfamiliar with this sort of quote-unquote conspiracy theory world to the most familiar. The Masons are weird people. I've had personal experiences with them. I'm for sure on a list of theirs. That's a story for another time. But if you're really unfamiliar, putting it as short as I can, it's an organization that is a complete secret society. It's very occult. They worship Satan, but that's a point for another time. They have been known as global manipulators for centuries. Countries have banned them because of who they are, but they are known to use their wealth and intrigue to control nations and to shape the futures of people and nations, and may or may not, definitely were, in my opinion, involved in assassinations historically, and things like the planting of people into positions of power that allowed them to exert further control and influence, and the everyday stuff. But I'm sure none of that should sound even remotely familiar or be ringing true for the overarching Erika Kirk story, because that'd be weird. On top of all this, Solomon's also known for some immense scandals, including stock fraud, investor fraud, casino fraud. In fact, he built a casino and then got taken out of the CEO position because of his fraudulent activities. He wasn't allowed to be in control of the company anymore. All sorts of stuff like that. And make you go, huh, it seems like quite the character. And yet he amassed massive fortunes and got appointed to all these big companies and was also appointed to the government to very important roles. So it makes you wonder who he actually knew and who he actually was. But leaving those two oddball characters right in the dust, here's where things are going to get even loonier. Rothstein is not only a relatively rare name, making it more than not simple to trace, it's also an infamous name, most especially if you're a sports aficionado, specifically baseball. Let me explain though. Long before Alan and Jack were manipulating corporations, looting the masses, and stacking it up into their $13 million homes, let me reiterate, $13 million, that's the sort of money only like a handful of people on Earth possess, so what's going on there? And I think I know the answer because there is a pretty clear progenitor to the Rothstein proclivity of purloining the populace's purse, and his name was Arnold Rothstein, a Jewish criminal who, it's widely asserted, fixed the 1919 World Series. He bet over $250,000, which at that time is an unprecedented fortune, roughly $5 million today, but that doesn't really factor in for the lack of buying power and what all that means. He, in essence, made the bet, the wager, that Chicago would lose to the Cincinnati Red Stockings in the 1919 World Series. For color on who Rothstein is, he didn't come out of nowhere. Rothstein was a longtime fixer, or in other words, cheater, as well as financier of crimes of all kinds, from the least degenerate to the maximum degeneracy. But in this specific instance, with the 1919 World Series, he, through a series of payoffs and threats to, people's families, ensured that the Cincinnati Reds won, the people who he bet on, which is illegal for all sorts of reasons. Arnold, though, having friends in politics, let me reiterate, politics, the legal system, like judges, and the police, got off on all charges despite it being the most obvious crime ever. Arnold is not a great guy to replicate or follow in the steps of, but he has become infamous enough that he even shows up in literature and movies, most specifically as the character Mayor Wolfsheim in the not-so-great, kind of short-sighted and whipped Gatsby. You can also thank Arnold for most of the crime syndicates that formed in the intervening years after his death. Yes, he was shot to death. Surprise, surprise. And the modern-day drug and human trafficking, etc. of today was in large part possible because of his initial funding of such crime networks. And so yeah, really a interesting guy in that family tree. But all in all, he's just an awful dude. But importantly, he's a Rothstein. And so here I'm going to say something. There's a missing link, and I think it's one of the most critical links possible, and I hope you all can assist me here with it. Arnold Rothstein, likely resulting from his profession of, murdering people and causing crime, kept it under wraps if and how many children he had and where they lived. And so it's been very hard to really connect to who he is. But if you look down the family tree and at some of his siblings and all that, you will notice that there are more Rothsteins that continue on the family name. But they all do something very interesting across genealogy sites. And the genealogy sites themselves might be in on this. And the thing they do is that they redact the children of these initial Rothsteins. And so that makes it very hard, dare I say impossible, for us to know who are actually Rothsteins today and if they're 100% connected to one another. And so I ask you guys to help me out here to try and find these missing links to start building this family tree so we can officially connect Erika Kirk to these Rothsteins and to these known criminals and justice system manipulators, just generally bad people. And I imagine that they probably keep this quiet and are trying to hide their identities, especially if Erika Kirk is one of them, because it would be pretty obvious that we shouldn't trust these people, as there are generations of Rothsteins who have committed all of these heinous crimes, and to think that they would be in such positions of power today might cause the American people to go, huh, we don't really want that, do we? But I don't want to yap too much, but we have this very obvious missing link, and it's hard to bridge those sorts of things when you cover up and when the family covers up all this information. But there's one thing the family can't account for, and I think it's rather ironic, is that the Rothsteins have seemingly never built anything of value themselves, but they certainly do know how to steal it. And so you have the original Rothstein stealing, the Solomon guy stealing, and then you have Alan Rothstein also stealing, committing fraud. It seems like the real family trait in the family heirloom is the ability to thieve and commit crimes and to get away with it enough to profit. Once again, let me reiterate, $13 million house, yet he's never built a business. Digressing though and getting back to the main track, it seems bizarre then that we have all these missing links, and then we've also got Erika Kirk, who won't really discuss her mom's side, past her mom and the missing names and the using the incorrect Swedish terms and the fact that there aren't any pictures of really her parents' face. And on that note, there is one video that exists that people speculate might be her grandparents, and it's on screen now. In any case though, it does make it increasingly difficult to trace her. But digressing again, we go through all of this family history to say that this is very possibly Erika Kirk's ancestry. And if we consider just how terrible these people are and the things they've been up to, including political manipulation, if Erika Kirk is related to them, that would be an insane link that would really throw a wrench in her story. And I think it would be enough for people to go, hold on, wait a minute. And I suspect that's why we won't officially know, unless someone out there, one of you guys, can find that missing link for us, for which I'd be so grateful. But something else interesting is still worth noting. We might not know Erika's exact family lineage, but presuming that they are Rothsteins, it's rather strange then that Rothstein shares family ties to another family, another prominent Jewish family that has been the center of many theories for hundreds of years and has been involved in everything from currency manipulation to economic crashes and to assassinations and everything in between. And that family would be the Rothschilds. Indeed, I was rather surprised to see that the two families are related, and pretty directly, because all I had to do was scroll over to the side and boom, there it was. The Rothsteins and the Rothschilds, two infamous crime families, connected right next to one another. Who knows, maybe this is all just one giant coincidence wrapped in a coincidence, taped in a rigmarole. I really don't believe